Welcome back to The Haunted Beard, everybody. My name is Jake. Once again, thank you so much for joining me. So, we all know that 2024 is right around the corner, and I figured it'd be a good idea to give you my list of most anticipated horror and thriller movie releases for this upcoming year. So, how we're going to do it is I'm going to just go through the entire calendar year and give you everything that's on the list that has a release date, January through December. And then at the end, I've got, 5 or 6 movies or so that are still TBD. So, with that being said, let's get to it. I've got 25 movies already for 2024, so it's shaping up to be a pretty exciting year. Let's do it. So, kicking things off on January 19th is Founders Day. And Founders Day looks to be the next slasher horror mystery thriller film, and it tells the story of a small town shaken by a series of ominous killings in the days leading up to a heated mayoral election. So the setup here sounds pretty interesting. This one too also has my interest because it was directed by this guy named Eric Bloomquist, who I've seen one of his previous films. He doesn't have any big breakout hit yet, but he directed a movie back in 2018 called Long Lost, which is very kind of low budget, under the radar indie movie that hardly anybody saw, but I watched it and I was actually pretty impressed with it. I thought it was a pretty good little movie. So it's got my interest here. I'm curious to see what he does with Founders Day, and that's coming out on January 19th in just a few weeks. Next up on February 2nd is Zone of Interest, and this isn't technically a horror or thriller movie, but it looks to be pretty horrifying in its own right, as this is a dark World War II history war drama. And it tells the story of the commandant of Auschwitz, Rudolf Höss, and his wife Hedwig, who strive to build a dream life for their family in a house and garden next to the camp. And one of the main reasons why I'm interested in this, first of all, is that it premiered in some film festivals last year to rave reviews, but also it was directed by Jonathan Glazer, who directed one of my favorite movies of the last handful of years, and that is Under the Skin. And so really curious to see his follow-up here. He has always got a pretty unique eye, and given the subject matter at this one, it looks to be pretty intense, and I can't help but be kind of curious to see what he does, so Zone of Interest is on my list. Next up on February 23rd is the action comedy crime thriller directed by Ethan Coen of the Coen brothers fame, and that is Driveaway Dolls. And this one tells the story of Jamie and Marion, who embark on an unexpected road trip to Tallahassee, but things go quickly awry when they cross paths with a group of inept criminals. And I'm a huge fan of the Coen brothers, and so given their track record, they always bring something unique to the table, and the cast as well. I can't wait to see Driveaway Dolls. Next up on March 1st, and this is probably my top 2 or 3 most anticipated movies of the year, and that is Dune Part 2, Denis Villeneuve's follow-up to Part 1, and I was a huge fan of Dune. I thought it was just visually amazing, just a really great story and world building, and so March 1st can't get here quick enough. I can't wait to see what he does with Part 2 to wrap up the whole story. It's going to be good. Next up on March 8th is a new release from Blumhouse, and that is Imaginary. Now, I don't have super high hopes from this one, but the premise does sound somewhat interesting, and so I am curious to see what Imaginary does. And it tells the story of a woman who returns to her childhood home to discover that the imaginary friend she left behind is very real and unhappy that she abandoned him. So it does sound like it could be interesting. I could probably go either way on this one. Don't have super high hopes, but it is on my list, and we'll see what happens. Also coming out on March 8th is Love Lies Bleeding, and this one is described as a romance fueled by ego, desire, and the American dream. The trailer for this one just dropped a handful of days ago. This one stars Kristen Stewart, Ed Harris, Dave Franco. But the big reason why I'm so interested in this one is it is directed by Rose Glass, who directed my favorite movie of, I believe it was 2019, and that is Saint Maud. So I've been waiting for her follow-up, and it is finally here. I can't wait to see what she brings here with Love Lies Bleeding. It's looking pretty interesting. Coming out on March 29th is Mickey 17. And this is South Korean director Bong Joon-ho's follow-up to Parasite. And not a lot of details are known about this one. The plot is still under wraps, but we do know that it is looking like a sci-fi adventure drama starring Robert Pattinson and Mark Ruffalo. And so just given the director and the cast, I can't wait for Mickey 17. I was a huge fan of Parasite. This one also, too, has Toni Collette in it, who's awesome, Steven Yeun as well. And so, yeah, I can't wait for this one. Mickey 17 coming out on March 29th. Next up on the list, coming out April 5th, is The First Omen. And I actually just watched the original Omen film from 1976 not too long and did a video on it of my live reaction. So check that out if you haven't. But here we have got a follow-up, and technically this is a prequel. And the setup here follows a young American woman who is sent to Rome to begin a life of service to the church. But she encounters a darkness that causes her to question her faith and uncovers a terrifying conspiracy that hopes to bring about the birth of evil incarnate. I'm a huge fan of religious horror, and I was a fan of that original Omen film, so here's to hoping that they can do something interesting with the prequel. It is the feature film directorial debut for Arkasha Stevenson. She directed a season of Channel Zero, who, if you haven't seen that show, definitely check it out. But yeah, she's definitely talented, and I was pretty impressed with her directing efforts within the show, and so I'm hoping that they can do something interesting with The First Omen. Next up on the schedule is on April 19th, there currently sits an untitled monster movie for Universal, and this looks to be like kind of a remake sort of some of them old Universal monster movies. And this one is directed by Radio Silence, Matt Bettinelli-Olpin, and Tyler Gillette. Stars Dan Stevens and Catherine Newton and Melissa Barrera, so solid cast there, good directors. We still don't really know what the monster is. We don't really know much more than that. Plot is totally under wraps, but it's on the calendar, and given the cast and directors, I'm definitely curious about it. So that comes out again on April 19th. Next up on May 24th is one of my most highly anticipated movies of the year, and that is Furiosa. And this is the origin story of the character of Furiosa before her encounter and team up with Mad Max. And I'm probably like just about everybody in that I absolutely loved Mad Max when it came out a handful of years ago now. But one of the best action, adventure, thriller movies of the last handful of years. I thought it was just phenomenal. George Miller is returning to direct, and so that's really good news. Also, I really like the cast. Anya Taylor-Joy, I'm very excited. She's great, so I can't wait to see what she does with the character. Also, Chris Hemsworth is cast as the main villain role, and I watched just a little bit of the trailer just to get a little taste for it, and yeah, it looks pretty great, and his character looks pretty interesting too. I thought that was definitely an unexpected casting choice there with Hemsworth, but it's looking pretty good. I can't wait for this thing. May 24th can't get here fast enough. Next up on June 7th is The Watchers. And this tells the story of Mina, a 28-year-old artist, as she gets stranded in an extensive immaculate forest in Western Ireland. After finding shelter, she becomes trapped alongside 3 strangers stalked by mysterious creatures each night. And this is a fantasy horror mystery that stars Dakota Fanning and also Georgina Campbell, who you may know from Barbarian that came out last year. But another thing that's really got me curious about this is that this is the debut from Ishana Shyamalan, which is M. Night Shyamalan's daughter. So I can't wait to see what she does. The setup here sounds really interesting, good cast as well, and so The Watchers is on my list for June 7th.
All right, had some recording difficulties for these next couple entries, but wanted to make sure I included them. So next up, coming out on June 28th, is A Quiet Place Day 1. And plot is under wraps, but looks like it's going to be a prequel. Big thing here, John Krasinski is not coming back to direct. However, he is credited as one of the writers. And instead, Michael Sarnowski is directing, who, if you know, a couple years back, I think it was 2 years ago, he directed Pig with Nicolas Cage, which I enjoyed. I thought was pretty good, so I'm curious to see what he does here. Looks like we're getting a new cast of characters as well. Jaimin Hansu is returning. He was in the last one, but then we're getting Lupita Nyong'o, Alex Wolff, and so shaping up to be hopefully something good. I was definitely a fan of the first two, so we'll see what they do with this, the prequel with Day 1. Again, that's coming out June 28th. And then next up on August 2nd is going to be M. Night Shyamalan's latest movie, and that is Trap. And again, plot under wraps, don't really know a whole lot. It is, though, described as a horror mystery thriller, and it looks like Josh Hartnett is the lead role in the movie. So that's really all we know. M. Night Shyamalan, for me, probably like most people, has been just kind of a coin flip. And so a lot of hits and misses lately, kind of back and forth, and you just sort of never know. But fingers crossed, I'm hoping he can do something good. So again, Trap comes out on August 2nd.
Coming out on August 16th is Alien Romulus, and this is directed by Fede Alvarez. And we don't really know too much about this yet, other than it takes place between the original Alien movie and the follow-up Aliens. And so it's going to be interesting to see what he does here, given that you've got two genuine certified horror sci-fi classics in this franchise. And also, I was a really big fan of Ridley Scott's follow-up with Prometheus, and I even quite enjoyed Alien Covenant as well. And so kind of handing the directing duties over to a new guy. We'll see what happens, but Fede Alvarez is a pretty talented director, and so, again, fingers crossed, I hope he can do something solid. Give us something hopefully kind of fresh and new, but also, kind of maintaining some respect to that original creation there. So we'll see what happens, but mark your calendars. Coming out on September 27th is going to be Saw 11, and I am glad to say that I'm singing a completely different tune that I was at this time last year when I was talking about Saw 10, as Saw 10, at least for me anyways, gotta be the horror surprise of the year, and so we're getting a follow-up on September 27th. That's really all we know at this point. It's pretty much just recently announced. Plot is still under wraps. I think it's pretty safe to assume that Tobin Bell's coming back, but no other cast has been announced or any sort of plot details, but mark your calendars for September 27th. There is some new life in the Saw franchise, and I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what they bring. Coming out on October 4th is Joker, Folie à Deux, I think is how you pronounce it, and this is obviously the sequel to Joker, Todd Phillips' film, and he's directing again, and Joaquin Phoenix is back, and this time we get Lady Gaga playing Harley Quinn. And this one, in addition to being kind of that crime drama thriller, it's also going to be a musical, which really has me curious. And so I was a big fan of Joker. I thought Joaquin Phoenix, his performance was worth the price of admission alone. And so, yeah, really curious, especially with it being a musical. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what they do, but I'm here for it, and I'll be there on October 4th. I can't wait. Next up, on October 18th, we're getting a sequel to Smile with Smile 2. And I enjoyed Smile for the most part. I didn't love it, but I thought it was a pretty good time. And so I am curious to see what they're able to do with a follow-up here. And we're getting the same director coming back. And that's really all we know, though, at this point. Plot details are under wraps, but it is on my anticipated list. And so Smile 2 coming out October 18th. We'll see what happens. All right, next up, October 25th, and this is probably my top 2 or 3 most anticipated movies of the year, and that's Terrifier 3. And what can I say about it, man? I was a huge fan of Terrifier 2. I can't wait for this. I did watch the teaser trailer. Usually I avoid trailers, but I thought this one, I just couldn't resist. I had to watch it. And so, yeah, I can't wait. I love the Christmas setting, and bring on Art the Clown. I'm here for it. Obviously, this is going to continue the story with, Lauren Lavera's character and everything. And so, yeah, I can't wait to see what happens, man. October 25th is going to be fun. I'm all here for it. Bring on some more Art the Clown madness. And, yeah, come on, bring it on. Also coming out on October 25th is Wolfman. And this is another kind of old Universal monster movie film. This is directed by Leigh Whannell, who is, I think, one of the best directors working in horror today. And this one is also stars Christopher Abbott, who I'm a big fan of. He's made a handful of movies, kind of a big sort of breakout star just in the last few years, but he's made some really solid stuff. He's really talented. And this looks to be kind of in a similar vein as Leigh Whannell's Invisible Man, as that was kind of one of those old classic Universal monster movies that he did a modernized take on. It looks like he's kind of doing something similar here with Wolfman. And so don't know a whole lot of details about it other than that, but with Leigh Whannell directing and Christopher Abbott starring, I think it's a safe bet. This one hopefully is going to be pretty good. So that's also coming out on October 25th. All right, and the last one, at least, that's got an official release date, and I will say this is my most anticipated movie of the year. Coming out on Christmas Day, December 25th, is Nosferatu. And this is directed by one of my absolute favorites right now, Robert Eggers. Stars Lily Rose Depp, Bill Skarsgård, Nicholas Hoult, and Willem Dafoe. And this is a gothic tale of obsession between a haunted young woman and a terrifying vampire infatuated with her, causing untold horror in its wake. And like I said, it's my most anticipated movie of the year. I just cannot wait for this. I've never seen the original Nosferatu from 1922. I have, however, seen one of the kind of, I guess, remake or follow-ups to that, Nosferatu the Vampire, which was directed by Werner Herzog, which came out in the 70s, which I was quite a big fan of. But I think I'm going to have to watch that original film leading up to this film. And yeah, I cannot wait for it. And Robert Eggers, man, just bring it on. Anything that guy does, I will be there for. So yeah, Nosferatu coming out on Christmas Day. Okay, now we've got just a handful of films that are still TBD. The first one on my list here is Shelby Oaks, and this was directed by, I guess you could say, YouTube star Chris Stuckman, who is somebody I've been watching and following for quite a while now, and been kind of watching some of the updates on his filmmaking journey with this. And this was actually on my list last year, as it was looking like maybe it was going to come out last year, but it didn't happen. So I feel like there's a good bet it's going to be coming out this year, but this is also a horror thriller film that tells the story of a woman's desperate search for her long-lost sister as she falls into obsession upon realizing that the imaginary demon from her childhood home may have been real. Big fan of Chris Stuckman. Can't wait to see what he does here. I'm definitely pulling for him, and I am very excited for when Shelby Oaks finally gets a release date. Next up is a movie called Long Legs, and this is directed by Oz Perkins, who directed one of my favorites, Blackcoat's Daughter, but also directed Gretel and Hansel. The guy just has an amazing visual eye. The cast here is also really good, as this one stars Nicolas Cage and Micah Monroe, and this is a horror thriller that tells the story of FBI agent Lee Harker, who's assigned to an unsolved serial killer case that takes unexpected turns, revealing evidence of the occult. So this one just sounds right up my alley, given the little plot synopsis, the director, the cast. I can't wait for this. Release date, like I said, is still TBD, but I'll be looking out for this one. It sounds like it's going to be great. Next up on the TBD list is I Saw the TV Glow. This is actually getting ready to make its debut at the Sundance Film Festival here in just a couple more weeks. And this is directed by Jane Schobrun, who directed We're All Going to the World's Fair, which came out a couple years ago. This is going to be an A24 release, so that pretty much right there has sold me. I really don't need to hear much more other than that. If it's an A24, I'm pretty much there. But also, too, the little synopsis we know about this one is that it follows two teenagers who bond over their shared love of a scary television show, but the show gets mysteriously canceled. And so I'm kind of a sucker for that sort of concept behind like lost media or cursed media, or I guess it just kind of feeds into my enjoyment of found footage and stuff like that. And so this one, given the director, the synopsis, and A24, I'm definitely there. Like I said, it's premiering in Sundance here in a couple weeks, so hopefully it'll get a release date not too long after that, and yeah, I'm excited for it. Next up on the TBD list is the untitled Backrooms movie, and this is also an A24 horror film, so again, I'm pretty much already sold. But this is being directed by a guy by the name of Kane Parsons, or you may know him as Kane Pixels, as that's what he goes by on YouTube. And this is an 18-year-old who is making these animated movies on YouTube, and they are incredible. And I've actually watched some of his videos. He's produced them entirely himself. They're all animated, and he's taken this internet lore known as the Backrooms and created an entire story around it. They're very creepy, and they're extremely well made. And so the fact that A24 came along and teamed up with this guy to make a feature-length version of this internet lore story around the Backrooms, man, I am all sorts of excited for this. I can't wait to see what they come up with. And so I'm definitely on the lookout for the Backrooms movie. Yeah, it's going to be pretty cool. All right, the final one, last but not least, and this is Maxine. And of course, this is Ty West's follow-up to X and Pearl, the third film to round out the trilogy as this continues the story of Maxine and what happens after the events of X, obviously starring Mia Goth. And there's still not a whole lot we know about it. Just a couple promo images have been released. There hasn't really been a trailer other than that really brief teaser trailer that was released a while back, but still not a whole lot known about it. Still TBD as far as the release date goes, but definitely one of my probably top 5 most anticipated movies for 2024. So whenever it comes out, I will be there. I can't wait for it. All right, everybody, that is all I've got for you. Those are my most anticipated horror and thriller movies of 2024. It's looking to be a pretty good year, man. I'm definitely excited. Lots of good stuff on the horizon. Hit me up down below, like always. Let me know. There's probably some movies I missed. I'm sure there's some movies on your list that I didn't have on my list or I overlooked or whatever. Let me know about some of yours that you're definitely looking forward to. Would love to hear from you. That's all I got. Thank you once again for watching. I greatly do appreciate it, and I will see you next time on The Haunted Beard.